Om Shri Sai Ram. Welcome, dear listeners, to the first episode of an audio series of tales from various sources, including the Amar Chitra Kathas and Chinna Kathas, narrated by the youth of Mill Hill Sai Centre. We begin this endeavour by saluting the elephant-headed Lord, and so the first story is titled Lord Ganesha, the Remover of Obstacles. Now for the story. One day, Goddess Parvati, Lord Shiva's wife, posted Nandi, his gunner, meaning attendant, at the door to her palace. She said, "I'm going to have my bath, but do not let anyone enter and disturb me." A little later, Lord Shiva came there. Nandi was in a dilemma. What should I do? He thought. How can I stop him from entering his own home? Lord Shiva entered the palace and strode into the inner rooms. Goddess Parvati said, "Nandi has disobeyed me. You may be my husband, but he had no right to let you enter." Whilst Lord Shiva laughed. He was amused, but Goddess Parvati was annoyed. She thought, I must have a gunner of my own who will obey me alone. She spoke to her friends about it, who said, "You are right, none of the gunners can really be called your own." Then, one of them had an idea. "Why don't you create a gunner who will owe his allegiance to you?" she said. Goddess Parvati responded, "A good suggestion. I shall." She gathered saffron paste from her own body and created a boy, and when she had finished, she gazed in admiration at her own creation. "He looks so strong and handsome," she exclaimed excitedly. She decked him with ornaments and blessed him, and then she said, "You are my son, my very own son. I have none else to call my own." He spoke. "Command me, mother. What should I do?" Goddess Parvati said, "Take this staff and follow me." She led him to the door, saying, "Stand here and let no one enter without my permission." A little later, Lord Shiva arrived at the door, wondering, who could that boy be? I have never seen him before. To Lord Shiva's astonishment, the youth barred his way. "Halt! No one enters without my permission," he said. Lord Shiva was taken aback. "Foolish boy, do you know who I am? Move out of my way." Without uttering a word, the youth struck Lord Shiva with his staff. Lord Shiva was furious. "Fool, I am Shiva, Parvati's husband. How dare you forbid me to enter my own home?" But the youth only raised his staff and hit Lord Shiva once again. Lord Shiva turned upon his gunners. "Who is that fool? What is he doing here? Throw him out and report to me." Lord Shiva left and the gunners turned upon the youth. He shouted, "Get away from here or you will receive a taste of my valor." They responded, "You get away from here if you value your life. You seem to forget that we are Lord Shiva's gunners." The youth stood still for a while. He was puzzled. "Shiva is my mother's lord. What should I do?" He thought, should I fight them or shouldn't I? Meanwhile, indoors, Goddess Parvati had heard the commotion. She sent her friend out, saying, "Please find out what all that noise is about." The friend soon returned. She exclaimed, "They're threatening your son. Please do something." Goddess Parvati hesitated for a moment. "Shiva is my husband, after all," she thought. "But why did he try to force his way in? Let what has to happen, happen." She sent the friend out once again. "Tell my son not to give in to anyone." The friend left. "Gentle sir, your mother says that you should not let anyone enter." The boy was no longer in doubt. He turned to the Ganas, saying, "I am the son of Parvati. You are the Ganas of Shiva. You must carry out his orders, and I hers. I repeat, Shiva shall not enter without my mother's permission." Now the Ganas were doubtful. They discussed, "He is Goddess Parvati's son, so what should we do? Would Lord Shiva still want us to throw him out?" They reported this to Lord Shiva. "Lord, it is Goddess Parvati's son who refuses to let you in." Lord Shiva thought, "Alas, Parvati, you have gone too far. You have left me with no alternative. If I tell my Ganas to withdraw, it will be said that I was subservient to my wife. My Ganas will have to fight him." He turned to his Ganas and said, "All of you are my own, including Parvati's son. So the battle may not seem appropriate to you, but if we don't accept the challenge, we may be misunderstood. Go, fight, and defeat him. It should be easy." The Ganas, fully ready for battle, went back to the boy. He was amused when he saw them. "I am a boy carrying out my mother's wishes. I welcome you, the leaders of Shiva's hordes." Then the Ganas rushed at him. They grabbed his legs, but the boy seized an iron club and whirled it about. Many of the Ganas fell, and the rest fled as fast as they could. Once again, the boy took his post at the door. Meanwhile, when the gods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Indra, heard the uproar, they talked the matter over with the sage, Narada, who had advised, "Go to Lord Shiva, he may need you." They went accordingly and bowed before Lord Shiva. "Lord, we are here to do your bidding." Lord Shiva told them all, "The boy dares to prevent me from entering my own home. O Brahma, go there and try to bring him under control." Brahma responded after deliberation, "I shall go there disguised as a Brahmin." Accompanied by many sages, Lord Brahma left on his mission. As they neared him, the youth suddenly jumped forward and grabbed a hold of Lord Brahma, who was taken unaware. He exclaimed, "I have not come to fight. I have come to make peace. Listen to me." For an answer, the youth lifted his club menacingly. He said, "Ha! Run! I shall never fail my mother." The sages returned to Lord Shiva, who said, "This matter has gone too far. The boy must be destroyed." He sent for his son, Kartikeya, and Indra, the king of the Devas. "Lead your Ganas and Devas to war and vanquish the impudent boy," commanded Lord Shiva. The Devas, led by Lord Indra, and the Ganas by Lord Kartikeya, fell upon the boy from all directions, but he faced them valiantly. Meanwhile, Parvati had learned of all that had happened, and she was furious. "How dare they harass my son?" Then and there she created two Shaktis, Mothers Kali and Durga, and commanded them, "Go and assist my son." Ma Kali stood between the boy and the enemy. Opening her mouth wide, she swallowed their weapons and hurled them back. Ma Durga took the form of lightning and destroyed the enemy's weapons before they could reach the boy. Between the two of them, they didn't let a single weapon come anywhere near the boy's swinging club. Indra and his Devas were completely defenseless. Even Lord Kartikeya, who had killed the invincible Tarakasura, was helpless. They held council. "What should we do? Let us go back to Lord Shiva," they said. "O Lord, we have seen and heard of many battles, but never have we seen or heard of such a warrior." This praise only infuriated him further. "I will have to kill him with my own hands," said Lord Shiva, as he thundered out, followed by all of them. Unperturbed by the sight of Lord Shiva, the boy attacked all the chief gods, and one by one they fell. As Lord Shiva watched him fight, he was amazed. "He is invincible and can only be killed by cunning. I must watch for an opportunity." The same thought had struck Lord Vishnu too. He spoke to Lord Shiva. "I shall use my powers of delusion to fight him, if you permit me." Lord Shiva said, "You may. That is the only way." But Ma Kali and Durga divined their intentions, deciding, "Let us confer all our strength on the youth. Then even Vishnu's Maya will prove ineffective." With the added strength of the two Shaktis, the boy swung his club at Lord Vishnu, who had to use all his energy to dodge it. Lord Shiva saw his plight and charged with his trident, but it was knocked out of his hand. He then took up his bow, but the boy dashed it to the ground with his club. He thought, "No wonder my gunners were helpless." At the next moment, the boy lifted his club, but it was cut in two by Vishnu's discus. He hurled what was left in his hand, but Lord Vishnu's Mount Garuda caught it and protected his master. Then, as the boy picked up his staff to hit Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva came up from behind and cut off his head. For a moment, all on the scene stood still, their gaze fixed on the valiant hero. Then the Devas and the Ganas became jubilant, but Lord Shiva was troubled. He thought, "Alas, what have I done? How shall I face Parvati? He was created by her. That made him my son too." Meanwhile, when Goddess Parvati learnt of her son's death, she exclaimed, "My son was killed by unfair means, and for this the Devas and Ganas shall all die." Out of her fury, she created hundreds and thousands of Shaktis who cried, "O Mother, what is your command? Destroy all the Devas and the Ganas. Devour them." The Shaktis immediately set about carrying out her command. But the gods Brahma and Vishnu were concerned. They propitiated Goddess Parvati and pleaded for mercy, saying, "O great goddess, have mercy on us. We shall accomplish whatever you ask of us. Please forgive us." She said, "I shall, but my son must regain his life and have an honorable status amongst you." They returned to Lord Shiva and put Goddess Parvati's conditions before him. "It shall be done for the sake of peace and happiness. Go north and bring the head of the first creature that crosses your path," he commanded. "Fit that head to the boy's body and it will come to life." It was a single tusked elephant that met them, and they brought back the head and fitted it to the body of the boy, who sat up. Delighted, they showed him to Goddess Parvati, but she was only partially appeased, asking, "What about his status?" At that moment, Lord Indra and the other gods led Lord Shiva to her. He bowed before Goddess Parvati, saying, "Forgive me, this valiant youth shall be another son of mine." Then he placed his hand on the boy's head, saying, "Even as a mere boy, he showed great valor. You shall be Ganesha, the presiding officer of all my Ganas. You shall be worthy of worship forever, and shall also be called Vigneshwara, the queller of obstacles. Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati once again began to live happily in their abode at Mount Kailash, delighted by the presence of their two sons. And that brings us to the end of the tale of Lord Ganesha, the remover of obstacles. We hope you enjoyed the story and were reminded of the importance of devotion to one's mother, as well as the importance of respecting the rights and wishes of women. It also highlights the consequences of being stubborn and acting brashly. To this day, before any venture is undertaken, it is Lord Ganesha who is invoked and whose blessings are sought. Thank you for listening. Jai Sai Ram.
Goddess Chamundi, the demon slayer. In Hinduism, Durga is a significant goddess and is one of the most prominent and highly respected Indian divinities. Protection, strength, motherhood, devastation, and conflict are all linked to Goddess Durga. She is one of Goddess Bhuvaneshwari's 5 forms, according to the Devi Bhagavata Purana. Her tale is about battling evil and demonic powers that threaten peace, prosperity, and dharma. Once, Durga slew Mahisha, the Asura ruler, and when the Asuras returned to the underworld after his death, Shumba vowed vengeance and ascended to the Asura throne. He launched an attack on the Svargaloka, the Devas' dwelling, with the help of his brother Nishumba, and was successful in taking it. While the Asuras were celebrating their victory, King Shumba's faithful lieutenants Chanda and Munda kept an eye on the deposed god's activities. The Devas rushed to Mount Himavat and begged Goddess Durga for assistance. Instead of Durga, Lord Shiva's consort Parvati emerged from her abode to listen to their woes. She was understanding. A woman's figure spilled out of her body, stunning to see. She was Ambika, incarnation of Durga. Victory to Ambika, said the Devas, who were pleased to see the celestial warrior. From afar, Chanda and Munda were watching, and their eyes popped as Ambika appeared. The goddess's breathtaking beauty was what impressed them the most. She'd be a terrific match for our king, Chanda said. You snatched the words out of my lips, said Munda. Shumba listened intently as his spies recounted all that had occurred. When they told him about Goddess Ambika, he was ecstatic. She sounded like the embodiment of feminine elegance. He announced, I will make her my queen. Without a doubt, she was created for me, the master of the 3 worlds. He dispatched one of his soldiers to the goddess with a marriage proposal. Ambika was most amused by the situation. I would want to be his queen, she expressed her desire. But is he the strongest? The strongest? The soldier inquired. I've made a commitment to only marry the 3 worlds' most powerful warrior. Is he the most powerful? He is very strong, the soldier remarked. Only if he can defeat me in combat will I believe that he is the strongest. The soldier returned to his master, distraught, to inform him of Ambika's rejection of his proposition. Shumba was irritated. Her arrogance complements her beauty, he observed, but she has to be put in her place. He summoned Dhumralochana, his commander-in-chief, and told him to bring Ambika to him. To carry out his king's commands, Dhumralochana marched at the head of an army of battle-hardened troops. He surged forward with a thundering shout as he saw Ambika. The goddess stood still as he approached. She said when he got close enough. The sound wave landed in the middle of Dhumralochana's forehead, and just like that, he'd been reduced to a smattering of ash. When Shumba learnt of the death of his bravest warrior, he was furious. he screamed, glaring at Chanda and Munda. "She's mocking me. She's making fun of me. She has no idea who she's up against. Get her now. Take her by the hair and drag her over to me." Ambika was very irritated when she saw Chanda and Munda arrive. She frowned a dark and furious frown, and the dreadful figure of Kali erupted from her forehead. When Chanda and Munda saw Kali Ma approaching them with her bloodshot eyes, a garland of skulls around her neck, and her tongue lolling, they were terrified. She destroyed their army, knocked off their heads, and delivered them to Goddess Ambika, who embraced her and proclaimed her as Chamundi, Chanda and Munda's slayer. Heaven and earth celebrated her victory, and the three worlds were once again at peace.
Unconditional and selfless devotion. Once, Lord Krishna was happily playing in his home in the company of his mother Yashoda. Whilst Mother Yashoda was churning the curd for butter, Krishna would not leave her till she removed that butter and gave him a share. The luster and white colour of the butter were already giving him pangs of hunger. Whilst in the background he heard a woman saying, "Mangoes, sweet mangoes, ripe mangoes." It was a fruit vendor going around selling mangoes in Gokul. Krishna's father, Nandaraj, called out the fruit seller. "Hey, would you please come? We want some mangoes." Krishna had been watching this, seated beside his mother, through the half-open door where his father was standing. The next moment, the fruit seller was standing in front of the main door with two baskets of ripe, golden mangoes. While she thought Nandaraj would negotiate the price of the mangoes, he asked her to wait for a moment, went inside and came with a basket full of grains. The barter system was a mode of making purchases during those days. Goods were exchanged for goods. "Would a basket of grains be sufficient if I want to purchase a basket of mangoes from you?" asked Nandaraj. The fruit seller nodded her head, saying, "No one has ever given me a full basket. Generally, people exchange it for half a basket of grains." Happily, she gave him a basket of mangoes. Yashoda was still churning the butter out of the curd, but Krishna's attention was caught up with the happenings outside in the mango grain deal. He understood by now that grains could be exchanged for mangoes. So he ran inside the storeroom and came out with a fist full of grains, carefully holding so no grain fell out. He rushed to the fruit seller and asked her, "Would you give me some mangoes in exchange for these grains?" Pouring those few grains into the palm of the lady. The fruit seller noticed the beautiful, big, black eyes and the locks of thick black hair falling on his forehead, which was graced by a peacock feather. Such innocence on his face. Her eyes shone with love for baby Krishna. She happily took a mango out of her basket and put it into Krishna's hands. "Why not, Nandalal?" Speechless with joy, as the lady looked at little Krishna, he smiled back at her, eating the mango, and it was enough for the lady to know that this baby was the divine incarnation.
Tenali Ramakrishna, the famous poet, humorist and philosopher from the state of Andhra Pradesh, once happened to lose his way while traversing an area of thick jungle. He lived in the reign of the famous emperor, Krishnadeva Ray, of the Vijayanagara dynasty, about 1500 AD. He was attached to the court, and was honoured as a wise and quick-witted minister. While he was wandering desperately in the jungle, he saw an old sage. Ramakrishna ran forward and fell at his feet in reverential homage. He asked the sage how he had become caught in that wild forest. The sage said, "The same mysterious force that dragged you here has dragged me to this spot. The moment when I have to cast away the body which I have occupied so long has arrived. I shall initiate you now into the mantra, sacred hymn, which I have recited all these years as my talisman and treasure." It was the mantra of Mother Goddess Kali, and he whispered it into the ear of Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna was overjoyed at the great gift. He retired into a temple of the Mother, deep in the recesses of the jungle, and was intent on the meditation of the Mother, propitiated by the mantra. At midnight one day, the aboriginal Koyas of the forest came into the temple with a goat, which they sought to offer as sacrifice to please her and propitiate her. Ramakrishna hid behind the idol, and when the knife was about to fall on the neck of the victim, he exclaimed, "I am the mother of all living beings, including you. If you kill my child, I will curse you. I cannot bless you." Believing that it was Kali who spoke, the Koyas desisted and went away. Now Kali manifested before Ramakrishna. She asked him what he would like to receive from her. She was pleased with his sadhana, spiritual practice. "Which do you want?" she queried, holding a plate of curd rice in one hand and a plate of milk rice in the other. He wanted to know the consequences of eating either plate before deciding which plate to ask for. She explained, "The curd rice will endow you with riches and economic prosperity. The milk rice will make you a wise scholar. Now, make your choice." Ramakrishna thought within himself, "It is no good being a fool in possession of vast riches, nor will scholarship fill the stomach 3 times a day." He was a clever person, so he asked a further question. "I see 2 plates before me. Before I make the choice, tell me how each will taste." She laughed and said, "How can I describe the taste and make you understand the difference? You will have to taste them yourself," and gave him both the plates for that purpose. The clever Ramakrishna hastily put them both in his mouth and managed to swallow the curd and the milk, the entire quantity of rice from both the plates. Kali was indignant and exclaimed that his impertinence called for dire punishment. Ramakrishna accepted his mistake and invited the punishment she proposed to inflict. But can the mother's punishment destroy the child, however reprehensible the conduct of the child may be? "My sentence will certainly save you. Do not tremble," said Kali. Then she pronounced the sentence thus: "Become a Vikata Kavi," that is to say, be a clever clown, having great influence at court, accumulating much wealth and guiding all those who approach you with good advice. God loves those who have self-confidence and the courage of their convictions, and who seize every opportunity to improve their spiritual status.
Purity, patience, perseverance. A certain spiritual aspirant went to a sage and asked him to give him a mantra. The sage said that he would impart the message only if the disciple agreed to serve him for 12 years, carrying out all his injunctions. The disciple agreed and carried out with his services to the preceptor with devotion for 12 years. At the end of the period, when the sage felt that his own end was approaching, he asked the disciple to bring a palmyra leaf on which he would inscribe the mantra before his death. The disciple went in search of a palmyra leaf, but before he could return, the preceptor died. On enquiry from a boy who was there, The disciple learned that before dying, the sage had written something on a bed of sand which a woman had copied, but then had wiped off the inscription. The disciple went in search of the woman, who had some donkeys. He learnt from her that she had inscribed on the palm leaf roll that she wore in her earlobe what she found on the sand. When she learnt from the young man that the writing on the sand was a mantra intended for him and for which he had served the sage faithfully for 12 years, the woman said that she would give him the palm leaf only if he served her dutifully for 12 years. The disciple, who was determined to get the mantra at any cost, agreed to serve her. The young man looked after the donkeys and served the woman for many years, living upon the food given by her. One day he could not get the food from her and went about in search of food. At that time he learned that the king of the region had been feeding the poor for a long time and that he might be able to get food if he went to the feeding place. On going there, he learned that from that day the king had stopped feeding the poor because it had not yielded the result he had expected from it. The king had started feeding the poor on the advice of his preceptor, who had told him that he would have a son if a truly godly man ate the food that he would serve to the poor. A bell was kept in the palace, and when it rang by itself, that would be the sign that a godly man had partaken of the king's food. As the feeding had gone on for a long time without the bell ringing, the king decided to stop the feeding. That was the very day when the young disciple went to the feeding place. On learning that all the vessels used for cooking the food had been sent to the river for cleaning, the young man hastened to the river bank to find out whether some food scraped from the vessels would be available for him. He found some crumbs at the spot and started eating them. At that very moment, the bell in the palace started ringing. The king was startled to hear the bell and immediately sent out messengers to find out who was the person who had eaten the food that day, which made the bell ring. After enquiries, the messengers traced the young man at the river and brought him to the king. The king was overjoyed in seeing the young man because he felt that he would soon have a son. He offered the young man half his kingdom and invited him to stay with him. The young man told the king his whole story and said that he was not interested in the kingdom or anything else, but only in the mantra from his guru, which was now in the keeping of the woman with the donkeys. The young man insisted that the palm leaf earring worn by the woman should be obtained without any compulsion. The king sent out men to trace the woman, who was brought before him. Learning that she was an acrobat who could perform feats on a rope, the king asked her to demonstrate her skill before the queen, who was now enceinte. As she was dancing on the rope, he asked her whether she could catch 2 diamond earrings he would throw at her and wear them while dancing on the rope. She readily agreed. The king threw the shining diamond earrings at her. Catching them in her hands, she took out the palm leaf rings from her earlobes, cast them down, and wore the diamond earrings in their place. As the palm leaf earrings dropped down, the young man rushed towards them and eagerly read the message inscribed therein. Immediately after reading the mantra, the young man secured instant illumination and liberation thereafter. A spiritual aspirant should have such determination and preparedness for any kind of sacrifice to achieve his goal.
Vikram and the Wildflowers. In the ancient kingdom of Ayodhya, there lived a young prince named Arjun, known for his courage and compassion. Arjun's father, King Raman, was a wise and just ruler who instilled in him the importance of integrity and humility. One day, a neighboring kingdom ruled by the tyrant King Varun threatened to invade Ayodhya. Varun was notorious for his cruelty and greed, and his army was feared throughout the land. Despite the looming danger, Arjun remained steadfast, determined to protect his kingdom and its people. As the days passed, Varun's army marched closer to Ayodhya, and tension rose among the citizens. But Arjun remained calm, drawing strength from his father's teachings and the values of courage and resilience. He knew that he had to confront Varun and his forces head-on for the sake of his people and their freedom. On the eve of the battle, Arjun gathered his advisors and warriors to strategize. But during the discussions, a humble farmer named Vikram stepped forward. "Your Highness," he said, "I may not be a warrior, but I have an idea that may help us defeat King Varun." Intrigued, Arjun listened as Vikram shared his plan to sow fields of wildflowers along the path of Varun's army. "Wildflowers?" the advisors exclaimed incredulously. But Vikram explained that the beauty and fragrance of the flowers would uplift the spirits of the soldiers, reminding them of the beauty of life and the values they were fighting to protect. Arjun was impressed by Vikram's insight and wisdom. He immediately ordered his soldiers to implement the plan, while he himself led a small group to meet King Varun on the battlefield. As the two armies clashed, Arjun faced Varun in a single combat. Despite Varun's superior strength and skill, Arjun fought valiantly, fueled by his unwavering belief in justice and righteousness. And in the midst of the chaos, the scent of wildflowers filled the air, reminding both sides of the values they held dear. As the two armies clashed, Arjun faced Varun in single combat. Despite Varun's superior strength and skill, Arjun fought valiantly, fueled by his unwavering belief in justice and righteousness. And in the midst of the chaos, the scent of wildflowers filled the air, reminding both sides of the values they held dear. In the end, it was not just Arjun's sword that prevailed, but the power of compassion and integrity. Seeing the beauty around them and the courage of their adversaries, Varun's soldiers began to question their loyalty to a tyrant king. And as the sun set on the battlefield, King Varun surrendered, acknowledging Arjun's victory and the values that had guided him. From that day forward, Arjun's kingdom prospered, not just because of his strength as a warrior, but because of the values of courage, compassion, and integrity that he embodied. And the fields of wildflowers served as a reminder to all who passed by of the power of goodness and the beauty of a life lived with purpose and meaning.
Overcoming karma and experiencing Ananda. Once when sage Narada was proceeding to Vaikuntha, the heavenly abode of the Lord, he saw a yogi who was engaged in severe ascetic practices. The yogi prayed to Narada to provide information about when he can enter the Lord's abode. So, when Narada stood in the presence of God, he pleaded on behalf of the yogi and asked that he may be informed of the date. The Lord replied, "Tell him that he will be coming here after as many more births as there are leaves on the tree under which he is currently doing penance." Narada felt sad and dispirited when he thought of the grief onto which the yogi would be thrown into on hearing his disheartening verdict of the Lord. But he mustered courage to announce it nevertheless, for the yogi insisted on learning the news that he had assured to bring. When Narada at last broke the demoralizing decision of the Lord, contrary to his expectations, the yogi was transported into a realm of joy. He was not dispirited in the least. The law of karma is not an iron law. By dedication and purification, which invites divine benediction, its effects can be modified and its rigor mitigated. Do not despair. Do not lose heart. When vices hold sway over your heart, it becomes foul and sooty. The flames of karma, krodha and lobha, desire, anger and greed, char the heart. What quenches these flames is the grace of the Lord. Grace confers bliss, ananda, which the evil tendencies, karma, krodha and lobha, can never confer. He jumped and danced in glee. He was lost in the thrill of his dream being so near actual fulfillment. He became oblivious to the world around and was filled with ecstasy, thinking of the Lord and offering him his profound gratitude. The Lord was so pleased of the joy of the yogi that he himself appeared before him and offered him Vaikuntha immediately. But the yogi said he would bide his time, for he did not like the Lord's words which Narada had brought to be falsified. The Lord now had to convince him that the good deeds, noble thoughts, and sacred feelings can wipe out the tracings of bad. Therefore, by his enthusiastic acceptance of the Lord's will, he has actually overcome the consequences of past actions.
Sage Markandeya winning over death. Sage Markandeya was leading an ascetic life in a forest. His wife was Marudvati. They were childless for a long time. Markandeya performed intense tapas for several years in order to please Lord Shiva to have children. Lord Shiva, in all his splendour, appeared before him. He said, "I am pleased by your devotion. Ask from me any boon you desire." Markandeya was overjoyed. He prayed to Lord Shiva, "O Lord, I am childless. Grant me a son." The Lord said in reply, "Do you desire to have a virtuous, wise, and pious son who will live up to 16 years, or a dull-witted, evil-natured son who will live long?" The sage Markandeya did not hesitate over the choice. He did not want a worthless son. He begged only for the short-lived son of whom he could be proud. Lord Shiva granted the request of his devotee and departed. After some time, Marudvati conceived and gave birth to a son. The parents were extremely happy about the new arrival, whom they named Markandeya. When Markandeya was 5, Markandeya arranged for his studies. Even in boyhood, Markandeya mastered all the Vedas and Shastras. His pleasing ways endeared him to his teachers. The boy was liked by one and all. When he reached the age of 12, his parents arranged his Upanayana. He was initiated into the chanting of the mystic Gayatri mantra. The boy was very regular in performing the Sandhya Vandana, which pleased his parents and other elders. He was thus spending his days very happily, delighting everyone by his charming looks and pleasant behavior. But the parents were sad at heart, and whenever they looked at their son, a gloom spread over their face. They did not tell Markandeya that he was not destined to live long. The 16th year was fast approaching. One day, unable to control their grief, they wept before him. Markandeya was surprised. He asked them gently the reason for their grief. Markandeya, with tears running down his cheeks, said, "Oh, my son, according to Lord Shiva's boon, you are destined to live only for 16 years. How can we withstand this? We are helpless and do not know what to do." Markandeya consoled his parents, saying that death was not a thing which wise people should dread. It is as natural as birth. The next day, the boy came to them and said, "Dear father and mother, do not worry for me. I am confident of winning over death. Permit me to perform severe penance to please the Lord." The parents blessed him heartily and sent him for penance. Markandeya was to complete the 16th year on a certain day. Yama knew that Markandeya's life was to come to an end. As usual, Yama's servants came to take his life, but they could not approach him, for the radiation from him was too intense for them. So Yama, the god of death himself, came on his wonted black buffalo. He had in his hands the well-known rope with a noose for taking out the young lad's soul from his body and carrying it away. Yama saw the young devotee engaged in the worship of Lord Shiva. Yama could not let the worship be completed if his duty as the god of death was to be properly performed. Markandeya could not be allowed to live a minute longer after the completion of the 16th year. Normally invisible to human eyes, this time Yama had been forced to show himself to the young boy by virtue of the latter's intense piety and devotion to God. Yama threw his rope with the loop and it went and encircled Markandeya's neck and also the Shivalinga. The Shivalinga at once split into two and out came Shiva, trident in hand. He pushed Yama aside and killed him to save the child. After that, at the request of other gods, Shiva restored life to Yama, then turning to the young devotee with whose piety he was highly pleased, Lord Shiva blessed him with deathlessness. He said to Markandeya, "Every desire of yours will be fulfilled. You will never be old or grey-haired. You will live virtuous and famous to the end of the world. Omniscience will be an asset to you." To this day, the Hindus reckon Markandeya as one of their immortals. It is said that Markandeya is a Chiranjeevi who lives with the body forever and whose body always appears young, beautiful and saintly on account of his yogic powers. Markandeya has become proverbial for long life. The blessing of the elders even today is, may you live like Markandeya, forever youthful and beautiful. People believe that even now, he is living somewhere in the Himalayas in deep meditation for the good of the world.
The Lord will not remain silent, particularly during times of darkness and despair. There was in Bengal a devotee named Madhavadasa, who, when his wife died, realized that he had lost his home, for his Grihalakshmi, the goddess of prosperity, had passed away. So he gave all his riches to the poor, donned an ochre robe, and wandered alone as a pilgrim to the shrine of Lord Jagannath, another form of Lord Krishna of Puri in the state of Orissa. There he did such deep penance that the concrete image soon became the abstract reality, and the abstract reality became a perpetual vision. He lost all sense of time and space, of chit, awareness, and achit, non-awareness. Then the Lord, with Mother Subhadra, his energy aspect, moved towards him and placed before him the gold plate used by the priests to keep the food in front of the idol of Lord Jagannatha in the Sanctum Sanctorum. When Madhavadasa awoke to his gross surroundings, he saw the gold plate with a pile of delicious food upon it. He ate his fill and returned to his inner paradise, which he had left for a while. Meanwhile, the plate was reported lost, assumed to be stolen, and discovered by the seashore near Madhavadasa, who was promptly arrested, which led to the lockup by some policemen. He was beaten mercilessly, but did not seem to mind it a bit. The chief priest that night had a dream in which Lord Jagannatha asked him not to bring food for the Lord again into the shrine. "You bring food for me, and when I eat it, you start beating me." Then he realized that it was the entire Leela of the divine to demonstrate the devotion of Madhavadasa and teach others the real nature of bhakti. Some scholars and pundits of Puri did not feel happy at this sudden rise to fame of a stranger from Bengal. So they called Madhavadasa into their midst and challenged him to an intellectual duel. Madhavadasa was not a Pandit of that type. He had learnt the Sastras only as a staff to help him walk, as a guide to action, not as a stick to beat others with. So he accepted defeat, even before the bout began, and signed a statement to that effect, which the leading Pandit was only too glad to accept, because Madhavadasa had a reputation for scholarship, which was really frightening. The Pandit hurried to Kasi with that token of victory. He waved it before a gathering of scholars and demanded that they should all pay him homage as superior even to Madhavadasa. But the Lord will not allow his devotee to be humiliated. When the signed statement was opened and read, they were all amazed to find that it was a statement declaring that it was Madhavadasa who had achieved victory, and it was the Pandit who had signed underneath, acknowledging his own defeat. Here we learn, the Lord will not be silent when his bhakta is insulted or harmed.
Hiranyakashipu was the king of the Daityas. The Daityas, though born of the same parentage as the Devas or gods, were always at war with the latter. The Daityas had no part in the oblations and offerings of mankind, or in the government of the world and its guidance. But sometimes they waxed strong and drove all Devas from the heaven, and seized the throne of the gods and ruled for the time. Then the Devas prayed to Vishnu, the omnipresent Lord of the universe, and he helped them out of their difficulty. The Daityas were driven out, and once more the gods reigned. Hiranyakashipu, the king of the Daityas, in his turn, succeeded in conquering his cousins and Devas, and seated himself on the throne of the heavens and ruled the three worlds: the middle world, inhabited by men and animals, the heavens, inhabited by gods and godlike beings, and the netherworld, inhabited by Daityas. Now, Hiranyakashipu declared himself to be the god of the whole universe and proclaimed that there was no other god but himself, and strictly enjoined that the omnipotent Vishnu should have no worship offered to him anywhere, and that all the worship should henceforth be given to himself only. Hiranyakashipu had a son called Prahalada. Now, it so happened that this Prahalada from his infancy was devoted to God. He showed indications of this as a child, and the king of the Daityas, fearing that the evil he wanted to drive away from the world would crop up in his own family, handed over his son to two teachers called Shanda and Amarka, who were very stern disciplinarians, with strict instructions that Prahalada was never to hear even the name of Vishnu mentioned. The teachers took the prince to their home, and there he was put to study with the other children of his age. But the little Prahalada, instead of learning from his books, devoted all the time in teaching the other boys how to worship Vishnu. When the teachers found out, they were frightened, for the fear of the mighty king Hiranyakashipu was upon them. And they tried their best to dissuade the child from such teachings. But Prahalada could no more stop his teaching and worshipping Vishnu than he could stop breathing. To clear themselves, the teachers told the terrible fact to the king, that his own son was not only worshipping Vishnu himself, but also spoiling all the other children by teaching them to worship Vishnu. The monarch became very enraged when he heard this and called the boy to his presence.
He tried by gentle persuasions to dissuade Prahalada from the worship of Vishnu and thought himself that he, the king, was the only god to worship. But it was to no purpose. The child declared again and again that the omnipresent Vishnu, Lord of the universe, was the only being to be worshipped. For even he, the king, held his throne only so long as it pleased Vishnu. The rage of the king knew no bounds, and he ordered the boy to be immediately killed. So the Daityas struck him with pointed weapons, but Prahalada's mind was so intent upon Vishnu that he felt no pain from them. When his father, the king, saw that it was so, he became frightened, but roused to the worst passions of a Daitya, made various diabolical plans to kill the boy. He ordered him to be trampled under the foot by an elephant. The enraged elephant could not crush the body any more than he could have crushed a block of iron. So this measure also was to no purpose. Poison, fire, starvation, throwing into a well, enchantments and other measures were then tried on the child one after the other, but to no purpose. At last the king ordered the boy to be tied with mighty serpents called up from the nether worlds and then cast to the bottom of the ocean, where huge mountains were to be piled high upon him, so that in course of time, if not immediately, he might die. And he ordered him to be left in this plight. Even though treated in this manner, the boy continued to pray to his beloved Vishnu. Salutation to thee, Lord of the universe, thou beautiful Vishnu. Thus, thinking and meditating on Vishnu, he began to feel that Vishnu was near him, and he was in his own soul. He began to feel that he was Vishnu, and that he was everything and everywhere. As soon as he realized this, all the snake bonds snapped asunder, the mountains were pulverized, the ocean upheaved, and he was gently lifted above the waves and safely carried to the shore. As Prahalada stood there, he forgot that he was a Daitya and had a mortal body. He felt that he was the universe and all the powers of the universe emanated from him. There was nothing in nature that could injure him. He himself was the ruler of nature. Time passed thus in one unbroken ecstasy of bliss, until gradually Prahalada began to remember that he had a body and that he was Prahalada. As soon as he became once more conscious of the body, he saw that God was within and without, and everything appeared to him as Vishnu. When the king Hiranyakashipu found to this horror that all mortal means of getting rid of the boy who was perfectly devoted to his enemy, the god Vishnu, were powerless, he was at a loss to know what to do. The king had the boy again brought before him and tried to persuade him once more to listen to his advice through gentle means. But Prahalada made the same reply. Thinking, however, that these childish whims of the boy would be rectified with age and further training, he put him again under the charge of the teachers, Chanda and Amarka, asking them to teach him the duties of the king. But those teachings did not appeal to Prahalada, and he spent his time in instructing the schoolmates in path of devotion of the Lord Vishnu. When his father came to hear about it, he again became furious with rage, and calling the boy to him, threatened to kill him and abused Vishnu in the worst language. But Prahalada still insisted that Vishnu was the Lord of the universe, the beginningless, the endless, the omnipotent and the omnipresent, and as such he alone was to be worshipped. The king roared with anger and said, "Thou evil one, if Vishnu is God omnipresent, why is he not in that pillar?" Prahalada humbly said that he was. "If so," cried the king, "let him defend you. I will kill him with this sword." Thus saying, the king rushed at him with sword in hand, and dealt a terrible blow at the pillar. Instantly, thundering voice was heard, and lo and behold, there issued forth from the pillar Vishnu in his awful Narsimha form, half lion, half man. Panic-stricken, the Daityas ran away in all directions, but Hiranyakashipu fought with him long and desperately, till he was finally overpowered and killed. Then the gods descended from the heaven and offered hymns to Vishnu, and Prahalada also fell at his feet and broke forth in exquisite hymns of praise and devotion, and heard the voice of the god saying, "Ask, Prahalada, ask for anything you desire. You are my favorite child, therefore ask for anything you may wish." And Prahalada, choked with feelings, replied, "Lord, I have seen you. What else can I want? Do not tempt me with earthly or heavenly boons." Again the voice said, "Yet ask something, my son." And then Prahalada replied, "The intense love, O Lord, which is the ignorant bear to worldly things, may I have the same love for thee. May I have the same intensity of love for thee, but only for love's sake." Then the Lord said, "Prahalada, though my intense devotees never desire for anything here or hereafter, yet by my command, do thou enjoy the blessings of this world to the end of the present cycle, and perform works of religious merit with thy heart fixed on me, and thus in time, after the dissolution of the body, thou shalt attain me." Thus, blessing Prahalada, the Lord Vishnu disappeared. Then the gods, headed by Brahma, installed Prahalada on the throne of the Daityas and returned to their respective spheres.